Chapter breaks. Short literary escapes. Classic audio pills for your commute, bedtime unwind, or a break anytime. At Chapter Breaks, we carefully select and curate iconic passages from classic novels, scenes that are powerful, memorable, reflective, and a joy to listen to. Whether it's a timeless first chapter, a dramatic turning point, or a magical moment, each episode offers you the essence of great literature, one short escape at a time. This chapter break is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, by Jules Verne, 1870. Part 1, Chapters 7 and 8. The Fall into the Sea and First Encounter with the Nautilus. Beneath the waves, wonder meets the unknown. A brief introduction. Cast into the open ocean after the collision with the mysterious monster, Professor Aronnax and his loyal servant Conseil struggle through exhaustion, cold, and silence, until a voice rises through the night. What they find is no creature of the deep, but something far stranger, a vast, metallic beast whose surface rings with the sound of steel. In this dramatic turning point of Verne's novel, Ned Land reveals the truth: the so-called narwhal is a machine. A submarine of unprecedented scale and power. Aronnax, Conseil, and Ned cling to its back until dawn, when masked sailors emerge and seize them, dragging them inside the legendary vessel, the Nautilus. It is the moment the mystery becomes reality, the threshold between the known world and the wonders waiting beneath the waves. We are about to step onto that steel deck for the first time, into Captain Nemo's domain, and into one of literature's most iconic voyages. Now let's open the page together. Your chapter break begins now. Chapter 7. An unknown species of whale. This unexpected fall so stunned me that I have no clear recollection of my sensations at the time. I was at first drawn down to a depth of about 20 feet. I am a good swimmer, though without pretending to rival Byron or Edgar Poe, who were masters of the art, and in that plunge I did not lose my presence of mind. 2 vigorous strokes brought me to the surface of the water. My first care was to look for the frigate. Had the crew seen me disappear? Had the Abraham Lincoln veered round? Would the captain put out a boat? Might I hope to be saved? The darkness was intense. I caught a glimpse of a black mass disappearing in the east, its beacon lights dying out in the distance. It was the frigate. I was lost. Help, help, I shouted, swimming towards the Abraham Lincoln in desperation. My clothes encumbered me, they seemed glued to my body, and paralyzed my movements. I was sinking. I was suffocating. Help. This was my last cry. My mouth filled with water, I struggled against being drawn down the abyss. Suddenly my clothes were seized by a strong hand, and I felt myself quickly drawn up to the surface of the sea, and I heard, yes, I heard these words pronounced in my ear: if Master would be so good as to lean on my shoulder, Master would swim with much greater ease. I seized with one hand my faithful Conseil's arm. "Is it you?" said I. "You." "Myself," answered Conseil, "and waiting Master's orders." "That shock threw you as well as me into the sea?" "No, but being in my Master's service, I followed him." The worthy fellow thought that was but natural. "And the frigate?" I asked. "The frigate?" replied Conseil, turning on his back. "I think that Master had better not count too much on her." "You think so?" "I say that, at the time I threw myself into the sea, I heard the men at the wheel say, 'The screw and the rudder are broken.'" "Broken?" "Yes, broken by the monster's teeth. It is the only injury the Abraham Lincoln has sustained. But it is a bad lookout for us, She no longer answers her helm. Then we are lost. Perhaps so, calmly answered Conseil. However, we have still several hours before us, and one can do a good deal in some hours. Conseil's imperturbable coolness set me up again. I swam more vigorously, but, cramped by my clothes, which stuck to me like a leaden weight, I felt great difficulty in bearing up. Conseil saw this. "Will master let me make a slit?" said he, and, slipping an open knife under my clothes, he ripped them up from top to bottom very rapidly. Then he cleverly slipped them off me, while I swam for both of us. Then I did the same for Conseil, and we continued to swim near to each other. Nevertheless, our situation was no less terrible. Perhaps our disappearance had not been noticed, and if it had been, the frigate could not tack, being without its helm. Conseil argued on this supposition, and laid his plans accordingly. This phlegmatic boy was perfectly self-possessed. We then decided that, as our only chance of safety was being picked up by the Abraham Lincoln's boats, we ought to manage so as to wait for them as long as possible. I resolved then to husband our strength, so that both should not be exhausted at the same time, and this is how we managed, while one of us lay on our back, quite still, with arms crossed, and legs stretched out, the other would swim and push the other on in front. This towing business did not last more than 10 minutes each, and relieving each other thus, we could swim on for some hours, perhaps till daybreak. Poor chance! But hope is so firmly rooted in the heart of man. Moreover, there were two of us. Indeed, I declare, though it may seem improbable, if I sought to destroy all hope, if I wished to despair, I could not. The collision of the frigate with the cetacean had occurred about 11 o'clock the evening before. I reckoned then we should have 8 hours to swim before sunrise, an operation quite practicable if we relieved each other. The sea, very calm, was in our favor. Sometimes I tried to pierce the intense darkness that was only dispelled by the phosphorescence caused by our movements. I watched the luminous waves that broke over my hand, whose mirror-like surface was spotted with silvery rings. One might have said that we were in a bath of quicksilver. Near 1 o'clock in the morning, I was seized with dreadful fatigue. My limbs stiffened under the strain of violent cramp. Conseil was obliged to keep me up, and our preservation devolved on him alone. I heard the poor boy pant, his breathing became short and hurried. I found that he could not keep up much longer. "Leave me. Leave me," I said to him. "Leave my master." "Never," replied he. "I would drown first." Just then the moon appeared through the fringes of a thick cloud that the wind was driving to the east. The surface of the sea glittered with its rays. This kindly light reanimated us. My head got better again. I looked at all points of the horizon. I saw the frigate. She was 5 miles from us, and looked like a dark mass, hardly discernible. But no boats. I would have cried out. But what good would it have been at such a distance? My swollen lips could utter no sounds. Conseil could articulate some words, and I heard him repeat at intervals, "Help! Help!" Our movements were suspended for an instant. We listened. It might be only a singing in the ear, but it seemed to me as if a cry answered the cry from Conseil. "Did you hear?" I murmured. "Yes. Yes." And Conseil gave one more despairing call. This time there was no mistake. A human voice responded to ours. Was it the voice of another unfortunate creature, abandoned in the middle of the ocean, some other victim of the shock sustained by the vessel? Or rather was it a boat from the frigate, that was hailing us in the darkness? Conseil made a last effort, and, leaning on my shoulder, while I struck out in a despairing effort, he raised himself half out of the water, then fell back exhausted. "What did you see?" "I saw," murmured he, "I saw, but do not talk, reserve all your strength." What had he seen? Then, I know not why, the thought of the monster came into my head for the first time. But that voice. The time is past for Jonas to take refuge in whales' bellies. However, Conseil was towing me again. He raised his head sometimes, looked before us, and uttered a cry of recognition, which was responded to by a voice that came nearer and nearer. I scarcely heard it. My strength was exhausted, my fingers stiffened, my hand afforded me support no longer, my mouth, convulsively opening, filled with salt water. Cold crept over me. I raised my head for the last time, then I sank. At this moment a hard body struck me. I clung to it, then I felt that I was being drawn up, that I was brought to the surface of the water, that my chest collapsed, I fainted. It is certain that I soon came to, thanks to the vigorous rubbings that I received. I half opened my eyes. "Conseil?" I murmured. "Does master call me?" asked Conseil. Just then, by the waning light of the moon which was sinking down to the horizon, I saw a face which was not Conseil's and which I immediately recognized. "Ned," I cried. "The same, sir, who is seeking his prize," replied the Canadian. "Were you thrown into the sea by the shock to the frigate?" "Yes, Professor, but more fortunate than you, I was able to find a footing almost directly upon a floating island." "An island? Or, more correctly speaking, on our gigantic narwhal. Explain yourself, Ned." Only I soon found out why my harpoon had not entered its skin and was blunted. "Why, Ned, why?" "Because, Professor, that beast is made of sheet iron." The Canadian's last words produced a sudden revolution in my brain. I wriggled myself quickly to the top of the being, or object, half out of the water, which served us for a refuge. I kicked it. It was evidently a hard impenetrable body, and not the soft substance that forms the bodies of the great marine mammalia. But this hard body might be a bony carapace, like that of the antediluvian animals, and I should be free to class this monster among amphibious reptiles, such as tortoises or alligators. Well, no. The blackish back that supported me was smooth, polished, without scales. The blow produced a metallic sound, and incredible though it may be, it seemed, I might say, as if it was made of riveted plates. There was no doubt about it. This monster, this natural phenomenon, that had puzzled the learned world, and overthrown and misled the imagination of seamen of both hemispheres, it must be owned, a still more astonishing phenomenon, inasmuch as it was a simply human construction. We had no time to lose, however. We were lying upon the back of a sort of submarine boat, which appeared, as far as I could judge, like a huge fish of steel. Ned Land's mind was made up on this point. Conseil and I could only agree with him. Just then a bubbling began at the back of this strange thing, which was evidently propelled by a screw, and it began to move. We had only just time to seize hold of the upper part, which rose about 7 feet out of the water, and happily its speed was not great. "As long as it sails horizontally," muttered Ned Land, "I do not mind, but if it takes a fancy to dive, I would not give 2 straws for my life." The Canadian might have said still less. It became really necessary to communicate with the beings, whatever they were, shut up inside the machine. I searched all over the outside for an aperture, a panel, or a manhole, to use a technical expression, but the lines of the iron rivets, solidly driven into the joints of the iron plates, were clear and uniform. Besides, the moon disappeared then, and left us in total darkness. At last this long night passed. My indistinct remembrance prevents my describing all the impressions it made. I can only recall one circumstance. During some lulls of the wind and sea, I fancied I heard several times vague sounds, a sort of fugitive harmony produced by words of command. What was then the mystery of this submarine craft, of which the whole world vainly sought an explanation? What kind of beings existed in this strange boat? What mechanical agent caused its prodigious speed? Daybreak appeared. The morning mists surrounded us, but they soon cleared off. I was about to examine the hull, which formed on deck a kind of horizontal platform, when I felt it gradually sinking. "Oh! Confound it," cried Ned Land, kicking the resounding plate. "Open, you inhospitable rascals!" Happily the sinking movement ceased. Suddenly a noise, like ironworks violently pushed aside, came from the interior of the boat. One iron plate was moved, a man appeared, uttered an odd cry, and disappeared immediately. Some moments after, 8 strong men, with masked faces, appeared noiselessly, and drew us down into their formidable machine. Chapter 8. Mobilis in Mobili. This forcible abduction, so roughly carried out, was accomplished with the rapidity of lightning. I shivered all over. Whom had we to deal with? No doubt some new sort of pirates, who explored the sea in their own way. Hardly had the narrow panel closed upon me, when I was enveloped in darkness. My eyes, dazzled with the outer light, could distinguish nothing. I felt my naked feet cling to the rungs of an iron ladder. Ned Land and Conseil, firmly seized, followed me. At the bottom of the ladder, a door opened, and shut after us immediately with a bang. We were alone. Where, I could not say, hardly imagine. All was black, and such a dense black that, after some minutes, my eyes had not been able to discern even the faintest glimmer. Meanwhile, Ned Land, furious at these proceedings, gave free vent to his indignation. "Confound it," cried he, "here are people who come up to the Scotch for hospitality. They only just miss being cannibals. I should not be surprised at it, but I declare that they shall not eat me without my protesting." "Calm yourself, friend Ned, calm yourself," replied Conseil, quietly. "Do not cry out before you are hurt. We are not quite done for yet." "Not quite," sharply replied the Canadian, "but pretty near, at all events. Things look black. Happily, my bowie knife I have still, and I can always see well enough to use it. The first of these pirates who lays a hand on me, do not excite yourself, Ned," I said to the harpooner, "and do not compromise us by useless violence. Who knows that they will not listen to us? Let us rather try to find out where we are." I groped about. In 5 steps I came to an iron wall, made of plates bolted together. Then turning back I struck against a wooden table, near which were ranged several stools. The boards of this prison were concealed under a thick mat of formium, which deadened the noise of the feet. The bare walls revealed no trace of window or door. Conseil, going round the reverse way, met me, and we went back to the middle of the cabin, which measured about 20 feet by 10. As to its height, Ned Land, in spite of his own great height, could not measure it. Half an hour had already passed without our situation being bettered, when the dense darkness suddenly gave way to extreme light. Our prison was suddenly lighted, that is to say, it became filled with a luminous matter, so strong that I could not bear it at first. In its whiteness and intensity I recognized that electric light which played round the submarine boat like a magnificent phenomenon of phosphorescence. After shutting my eyes involuntarily, I opened them, and saw that this luminous agent came from a half-globe, unpolished, placed in the roof of the cabin. "At last one can see," cried Ned Land, who, knife in hand, stood on the defensive. "Yes," said I, "but we are still in the dark about ourselves." "Let master have patience," said the imperturbable Conseil. The sudden lighting of the cabin enabled me to examine it minutely. It only contained a table and 5 stools. The invisible door might be hermetically sealed. No noise was heard. All seemed dead in the interior of this boat. Did it move, did it float on the surface of the ocean, or did it dive into its depths? I could not guess. A noise of bolts was now heard, the door opened, and two men appeared. One was short, very muscular, broad-shouldered, with robust limbs, strong head, an abundance of black hair, thick moustache, a quick penetrating look, and the vivacity which characterizes the population of southern France. The second stranger merits a more detailed description. A disciple of Gratiolet or Engel would have read his face like an open book. I made out his prevailing qualities directly: self-confidence, because his head was well set on his shoulders, and his black eyes looked around with cold assurance; calmness, for his skin, rather pale, showed his coolness of blood; energy, evinced by the rapid contraction of his lofty brows; and courage, because his deep breathing denoted great power of lungs. Whether this person was 35 or 50 years of age, I could not say. He was tall, had a large forehead, straight nose, a clearly cut mouth, beautiful teeth, with fine taper hands, indicative of a highly nervous temperament. This man was certainly the most admirable specimen I had ever met. One particular feature was his eyes, rather far from each other, and which could take in nearly a quarter of the horizon at once. This faculty, I verified it later, gave him a range of vision far superior to Ned Land's. When this stranger fixed upon an object, his eyebrows met, his large eyelids closed around so as to contract the range of his vision, and he looked as if he magnified the objects lessened by distance, as if he pierced those sheets of water so opaque to our eyes, and as if he read the very depths of the seas. The two strangers, with caps made from the fur of the sea otter, and shod with steel boots of seal's skin, were dressed in clothes of a particular texture, which allowed free movement of the limbs. The taller of the two, evidently the chief on board, examined us with great attention, without saying a word, then turning to his companion, talked with him in an unknown tongue. It was a sonorous, harmonious, and flexible dialect, the vowels seeming to admit of very varied accentuation. The other replied by a shake of the head, and added 2 or 3 perfectly incomprehensible words. Then he seemed to question me by a look. I replied in good French that I did not know his language, but he seemed not to understand me, and my situation became more embarrassing. "If master were to tell our story," said Conseil, "perhaps these gentlemen may understand some words." I began to tell our adventures, articulating each syllable clearly, and without omitting one single detail. I announced our names and rank, introducing in person Professor Aronnax, his servant Conseil, and Master Ned Land, the harpooner. The man with the soft calm eyes listened to me quietly, even politely, and with extreme attention, but nothing in his countenance indicated that he had understood my story. When I finished, he said not a word. There remained one resource: to speak English. Perhaps they would know this almost universal language. I knew it, as well as the German language, well enough to read it fluently, but not to speak it correctly. But, anyhow, we must make ourselves understood. "Go on in your turn," I said to the harpooner, "speak your best Anglo-Saxon, and try to do better than I." Ned did not beg off, and recommenced our story. To his great disgust, the harpooner did not seem to have made himself more intelligible than I had. Our visitors did not stir. They evidently understood neither the language of Arago nor of Faraday. Very much embarrassed, after having vainly exhausted our speaking resources, I knew not what part to take, when Conseil said, "If master will permit me, I will relate it in German." But in spite of the elegant terms and good accent of the narrator, the German language had no success. At last, nonplussed, I tried to remember my first lessons, and to narrate our adventures in Latin, but with no better success. This last attempt being of no avail, the two strangers exchanged some words in their unknown language, and retired. The door shut. "It is an infamous shame," cried Ned Land, who broke out for the 20th time. "We speak to those rogues in French, English, German, and Latin, and not one of them has the politeness to answer." "Calm yourself," I said to the impetuous Ned, "anger will do no good. But do you see, Professor, replied our irascible companion, that we shall absolutely die of hunger in this iron cage? Bah, said Conseil, philosophically, we can hold out some time yet. My friends, I said, we must not despair. We have been worse off than this. Do me the favor to wait a little before forming an opinion upon the commander and crew of this boat. My opinion is formed, replied Ned Land, sharply. They are rascals. Good. And from what country? From the land of rogues. My brave Ned, that country is not clearly indicated on the map of the world, but I admit that the nationality of the two strangers is hard to determine. Neither English, French, nor German, that is quite certain. However, I am inclined to think that the commander and his companion were born in low latitudes. There is southern blood in them. But I cannot decide by their appearance whether they are Spaniards, Turks, Arabians, or Indians. As to their language, it is quite incomprehensible. There is the disadvantage of not knowing all languages, said Conseil, or the disadvantage of not having one universal language. As he said these words, the door opened. A steward entered. He brought us clothes, coats and trousers, made of a stuff I did not know. I hastened to dress myself, and my companions followed my example. During that time, the steward, dumb, perhaps deaf, had arranged the table, and laid 3 plates. This is something like, said Conseil. Bah, said the rancorous harpooner, what do you suppose they eat here? Tortoise liver, filleted shark, and beef steaks from sea dogs. We shall see, said Conseil. The dishes, of bell metal, were placed on the table, and we took our places. Undoubtedly we had to do with civilized people, and, had it not been for the electric light which flooded us, I could have fancied I was in the dining room of the Adelphi Hotel at Liverpool, or at the Grand Hotel in Paris. I must say, however, that there was neither bread nor wine. The water was fresh and clear, but it was water, and did not suit Ned Land's taste. Amongst the dishes which were brought to us, I recognized several fish delicately dressed, but of some, although excellent, I could give no opinion, neither could I tell to what kingdom they belonged, whether animal or vegetable. As to the dinner service, it was elegant, and in perfect taste. Each utensil, spoon, fork, knife, plate, had a letter engraved on it, with a motto above it, of which this is an exact facsimile. Mobilis in mobili. N, the letter N was no doubt the initial of the name of the enigmatical person, who commanded at the bottom of the sea. Ned and Conseil did not reflect much. They devoured the food, and I did likewise. I was, besides, reassured as to our fate, and it seemed evident that our hosts would not let us die of want. However, everything has an end, everything passes away, even the hunger of people who have not eaten for 15 hours. Our appetites satisfied, we felt overcome with sleep. Faith! I shall sleep well, said Conseil. So shall I, replied Ned Land. My 2 companions stretched themselves on the cabin carpet, and were soon sound asleep. For my own part, too many thoughts crowded my brain, too many insoluble questions pressed upon me, too many fancies kept my eyes half open. Where were we? What strange power carried us on? I felt, or rather fancied I felt, the machine sinking down to the lowest beds of the sea. Dreadful nightmares beset me. I saw in these mysterious asylums a world of unknown animals, amongst which this submarine boat seemed to be of the same kind, living, moving, and formidable as they. Then my brain grew calmer, my imagination wandered into vague unconsciousness, and I soon fell into a deep sleep.